Welcome back to Homesteading with the Zimmermans, where each week we give you another episode of what's happening here on our Northeast Iowa 21-acre homestead. My husband Alvin and I have been married for 25 years and we have 7 children. 5 of those children still live at home. Our oldest 2 are married and no longer live at home, so this means we also have 2 son-in-laws and 1 grandson so far. So on our 21-acre homestead, we seek to preserve the self-sufficient lifestyle of our old order Mennonite heritage for the next generation. We involve the children in every aspect of the homestead, from raising and harvesting our own meat, gardening and preserving to fill the family's larder, or preserving the dairy from the family milk cows, plus all the many other skills that develop the character and integrity and relationships of a family that seeks to bring glory and honor to their Heavenly Father. Hello YouTube family. Today we are going to can some barbecue sauce. So I've got bags of tomatoes here that I had frozen, and whenever I make barbecue sauce or ketchup, I want to start with frozen tomatoes because when you freeze them and thaw them, you've got all of that water content that you're already done with. So normally when you make ketchup or barbecue sauce, you're either going to cook your product for a long time uncovered and let all of that liquid dissipate into the air, or you're going to add a thickener. So I am going to take this one step further and use frozen tomatoes. And not all of them are completely thawed yet, but that's okay. I'm going to let them sit out here in the sun, let the sun do its work, because I have other things I can do while I wait for them to completely thaw. And they're just going to drip, drip, drip. So I've got this strainer, which I love. And then I'm also going to use my blanching pot, because that one has holes in and the tomatoes will strain well in this one. So I don't like to put tomatoes in the freezer. In the past, I really didn't like to put tomatoes in the freezer because then I would forget about them, and then, you know, we'd need the freezer room and I'd be like, oh man, there are those tomatoes still. But I've learned that if I put them in the freezer with a plan, like next week I'm gonna make barbecue sauce, it works a lot better for me. And good thing that I've been intentional, because we had a steer that we butchered and it's time to go pick that one up at the butcher shop. So I'm gonna be happy not to have all these tomatoes in my freezer when we bring all that meat home. Smells like home to me. Smelling tomatoes reminds me of the big canning days of my childhood where we all had to help. I'm going to dump some of this out because I'm afraid there we go. Now that can strain. So I've got one more strainer I'm going to use, and that's this one. All right, I'm pushing the limits here. I've got one more small bag. There we go. Now we're gonna let those strain. So now I'm just going to find ways to stay busy here around the homestead while I give those tomatoes a couple hours to get rid of all of their water content. So I'm also going to hang out some towels. Normally we do all of our laundry on Mondays and Fridays. Yesterday was Monday and it was rainy, and I didn't want to run all the towels through the dryer, so I left the towels for today because today was forecasted to be sunny. So we've got a nice sunny day to dry these towels. So I am going to fill this dishwasher with pint jars, and we're going to get these washed. All right, so I've got my 14-quart pot. So I'm not going to measure my tomato juice. I'm just going to eyeball it by knowing how big my pot is. So you can go two ways from here. You can take your tomato pure, your frozen, mashed, whatever, your mushy tomatoes, and throw everything in the blender and make your tomato juice that way. I'm going to put it through the food mill instead of the blender because my tomatoes weren't really nice this year, so the skins weren't really nice. So I don't want to puree the skins in the blender. I just want to remove the skins before I start cooking. You want to watch me? Hey, do you want to go inside and get more tractors? All right, so this is taking a really long time. About 3 times already I've thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to throw this all in the blender. But let me show you why I haven't done that yet. I think I'm just going to power through. And normally in years past, when I have made barbecue sauce, I've done a much bigger batch. And then I've used my Victorio strainer, which is a much bigger contraption and doesn't take quite as much energy. But I'm just going to power through. I have made some progress. And here's why I'm not just going to go switch to the blender. Because, I mean, look at that. Nice thick tomato sauce. It's all just from the tomatoes. And my goal was to not have to add any thickeners to my barbecue sauce. My goal was to not have to add any thickeners to my barbecue sauce. So if that means I have to work a little harder, then that's what I'm going to do. All right, there we go. We're finally done cranking all those tomatoes through. Look how beautiful and thick that sauce is. No need for a thickener with this. So now we're just going to start slow heating this, and I'm going to start adding my ingredients. So let me do a little bit of math. If this is a 14-quart kettle and this is a little more than half full, so 7 quarts, let's say this is about 10 quarts, which would be 40 cups, because there's 4 cups in a quart. So I gotta adjust my recipe accordingly. So the first thing I'm gonna add is about 1 cup of lemon juice. This will bring the acid level up where we don't have to worry about it being too low of a pH for water bath canning. Plus we're gonna add a whole bunch of brown sugar too. Okay, I had to turn my burner down because this is getting hot real fast. Next we're gonna add a little less than a cup of Worcestershire sauce. Add about 3/4 a cup of salt and about 2/3 a cup of liquid smoke. And then we're going to add 2 cups of apple cider vinegar. Don't get too concerned about exact measurements at this point, because you're going to customize your barbecue sauce to taste the way your family wants the barbecue sauce to taste. And because we've added vinegar and lemon juice, there is no concern about this being low acid and needing to be pressure canned or concerned about botulism. So basically you can adjust the flavors to be any way you want it to be. Alright, so next we're adding all the sugar, and before you freak out about all this sugar, let me remind you, it's not corn syrup. It's actual brown sugar. And then the other thing to remember is my family's going to be eating this like by the tablespoon, teaspoon, tablespoon size serving, not by the cupful. If this was something that we were going to be eating by the cupful, I would probably be trying to look for an alternative. If you want to, you could use honey or maple syrup or other low-calorie sweetener. I'm not using maple syrup because, number one, it makes my barbecue sauce too runny, and maple syrup is a little more dear to me. Like, I don't want to put it in my barbecue sauce because I want it available for actual nutrition, like to sweeten our yogurt or something like that. So I really don't mind putting brown sugar in my barbecue sauce, simply because it is something that we're only going to be eating in a teaspoon and tablespoon size serving. Everything in moderation. All right, I've got a couple more ingredients to add. So I don't know if your family is like my family, but we have all these partial containers of condiments in our fridge. So I need between 3 and 4 tablespoons of prepared mustard. So I'm going to see how many mustard containers I can empty. Now I better put mustard back on my grocery list. We also need about 1/3 cup of paprika. And like I said, don't get too hung up on your measurements here, because you're going to adjust it and make it the way you want it. All right, this is the last ingredient on my list, and this is blackstrap molasses, and I need between 2 and 3 cups of this. And the thing with blackstrap molasses is it'll give the barbecue sauce its real creamy and rich flavor without adding a whole lot more sweetness. So one of the things I'm going to do with my barbecue sauce before it gets real hot is I'm just going to blend it with my immersion blender, because it's not quite as smooth as the store-bought. And I think some of my family with sensitive palates or refined palates is going to notice that. That helped a little bit, and I'll probably do that again as it thickens. But for now, get this started simmering, and I'm not going to have to add anything to this. I'm not going to have to add any thickener to this. So that was my goal, and I'm going to start washing together my dishes while this starts to simmer, because as thick as this is, I know that I'm going to have to keep a close eye on it. So you can tell by the way this is bubbling that it has gotten a lot thicker, and it is time to start ladling it into our pint jars. Now I am using pint jars because that's about what we will use before it spoils. If I use quart jars, I have found that we use about half of it and then it gets pushed to the back of the refrigerator, and before I know it, it has spoiled. So that's why I put my barbecue sauce into pints. So my mom would often use a method for her barbecue sauce and ketchup called an open kettle canning, where she would take clean jars and she would ladle boiling hot liquid into the clean jars and then put hot lids onto the jars and just let them sit. And as the product cooled, it created a vacuum and that sealed the jars. Now, I have used open kettle canning in the past, and I still do sometimes as a shortcut. But in my experience, I have a much better seal rate and my jars stay sealed longer when I do a hot water bath. So I'm not worried about my jars staying, my product being boiling hot right here, because I am going to water bath them. So I simply have clean jars and I'm putting the product in, and then I'm putting lids and rings on, and then next we are going to hot water bath these. So I found this little rat snake in one of my pots under my outdoor kitchen when I was getting ready to water bath my barbecue sauce. And although I don't love snakes, I don't hate them either, but this little guy really surprised me. So this is a rat snake, and they are very beneficial for the homestead. It will eat rats and mice and voles and moles and even pocket gophers. And so when I see rat snakes around the homestead, I know that they are just working on taking care of all those little varmints that work against us. So I allowed him to warm up here in the sunshine, and it wasn't long before he crawled away and hopefully found himself a new home. So I fill my canners with my pint jars and hot water, and I'm using hot water because the product in my jars was hot. So I want to use the same temperature water as the product in my jars, because if you use a drastic different temperature of water, then your glass can expand too quickly or retract too quickly and break. So we're going to hot water bath these for 10 minutes. Because they're pints. If you're doing quarts, you might want to do more like 15 or 20 minutes. And all that we're doing is making the product, we're heating the product so that when you remove your jars from the hot water, the temperature drops, and as your product cools, it's going to create a vacuum. Two things are going to happen. Number one, the rubber on your lid is going to seal down against the jar, and also the vacuum is going to eliminate any oxygen that is between your product and the lid. So the lack of oxygen means no bacteria can grow. And because the lid is now sealed down against the top of the jar, no new bacteria can enter, and this is what preserves your product. Hey, Harrison,
What?
can you bring me, we'll go finish your chores,
Yep.
and then can you bring me a marker?
Yeah.
Can you write Go get a sweatshirt on. You can close that if it's getting cold in there. Get your shoes and sweatshirt.
Okay. All my switches are at school.
That sucks to be you. Right? Barbecue sauce. BBQ on those jars. Capital B, capital B, capital Q.
Cupid! Roll it!
BBQ. Good job. All right, guys, thank you for being here. The kids have helped me take all the barbecue sauce down. And one of these days, I'm going to take you down into our cold storage and show you what we all accumulated from the garden this season so far. But as of now, it's just a big mess down there because I've been sending the kids down and they're just putting things wherever there's room. So one of these days, I'm going to have to go down there and straighten things up and kind of take stock of what we've got. So thank you everybody for being here. We will see you next week.